There it is, the most famous Prehistoric. Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. Mark Knopfler of Dire Straits fame is selling his guitar collection with Christies auction house. And there's certainly some iconic pieces in here, but this is taking place on January 31st. Now he plans to donate about 25% of the proceeds. And according to our cost calculator, it looks like there's about a 26% buyer's premium on top of the bids you place. So let's start with the guitar that most people would probably think would be the Big Mac Daddy. It's a 1959 burst, the real deal. And all things considered, it's actually retained its color pretty well for a 59, and it's got some nice figuring to it. Maybe not on the scale of modern day custom shops, but generally the original bursts aren't as crazy as you've been led to believe. For as much as it's been played, it's actually in really respectable shape, like we got a little bit of edge wear. Some character over here, but the top's really starting to come to life in these angles. And you got some really nice wood grain along the side. Looks like it's definitely had a fret job, but our headstock has held up pretty well. But oop, somebody did slice off a little bit on the back there, but there's the serial number of one of his two bursts, 91258. Yep, that case has seen better days, but at least you still have it. Now, as far as the history of this one, it just looks like he always wanted a Les Paul. He was more so familiar with Stratocasters, but he could just never afford to buy one of the classic years ones, so in the 80s, he would get the brand new reissues, which he recorded for things like Brother in Arms and Money for Nothing. And then Gibson later built him one with his birthday as the serial number. But it looks like he first used this real 59 somewhere around the 2000s, but you can read the rest of this yourself. It's estimated to bid somewhere between 300 and 500,000 pounds, which at the time of recording is about a 26% premium, so nearly 650 grand. We'll have to see how that does. That minty burst just sold for what, around 500,000. We'll see if the name and the charity makes it go up higher. But I mentioned his reissues, right? In my eyes, Mark Knopfler is the prehistoric guy. Whenever you talk about the early history of Gibson reissues, his name and this exact guitar comes up. This is one of the only famous prehistorics. However, I think we've actually been lied to all these years. A little bit more on that here in a second. So for those of you who aren't familiar with what I'm talking about here, a prehistoric is what we call the Les Paul reissues that were built before the official custom shop opened in late 1993. So you're generally talking about 1983 through 1993. Now, are there a few dealer exclusives before that? Yes, but for the point of this video, let's just forget about those. So this is the Brother in Arms guitar. Here you can see him, 1985, playing this exact thing. And if you want verification that this is that, look right here, you got this interesting wood grain formation. And you can see it right here. You can make many different caricatures out of that, but it looks like a giant eye right here that has some shading underneath it, and then it has like a scary mouth. Kind of like a one-eyed version of this guy, or a side profile view, but a little bit more dog-shaped. The other characteristic mark about this one is there's like a little dot right there. I'm not sure if that's wood grain or if it's just aged differently. The top is actually pretty cool on this one. Prehistorics usually get really pinstripey, but this one is pretty wide. You can tell it's gonna look great. Looked great all the way back in 1985. Here's another good angle of it. And it's rumored to be this exact guitar on this stand. But as far as the internet history has been concerned, this guitar has always been seen as the prehistoric run, right before they launched the Les Paul reissues. Because again, 1983, it's their introduction. They would be labeled 3, standing for 1983, and then their production number. However, right before they did this, there was a version that had the 9 still as the leading serial. In fact, we documented the first one made from that particular batch in this episode. That was a great guitar. Maybe one day I'll buy it back. So these ones, how do you know they're 83? You have to look inside their pot codes to see the 83 dates. Then you also have to look inside the neck pickup cavity. They typically have the Made in USA stamp. And then they have their production number. So besides the confusing prehistoric naming, it's always been called the Mark Knopfler run because his guitar was supposed to have been from this batch. So imagine my surprise when we get a nice photo of the back, go to our serial number and go, oh, we've been lied to this entire time. We need to strip his name off that batch because this is something completely different. So our Brother in Arms guitar is a prehistoric, but this is one of those special dealer exclusive style ones because it's got the way smaller font. But this more so looks like one of those Japanese exclusive runs. Now, I would love to dig further into this and figure out more. However, we don't have enough detailed photos. Something strange that I do note on this, it doesn't have the prehistoric logo yet. That's just the standard style one. The reissues were kinda looking something like this before they get even jankier. So that also tells us it's not part of the run that we associated this one with before. So I was a little bit heartbroken to learn all this stuff. The guitar that we've worshipped and praised for being the prehistoric king is not exactly what we were thinking of. Look, it even has the Made in USA stamp still on it. This is a freaky beast. I need to document this guitar. I'm sure the internet would love watching that. I don't know how crazy the bidding is really going to go on this. As far as I'm aware, this is the money for nothing guitar. It just had its colors kind of changed in the music video. There we go, we can see it a little bit better there. So maybe not as prominent as like Steve Howe's The Les Paul in the Whale music video or Heat of the Moment, but that's what it is. So they're estimating between 10 and 15,000 pounds. So on the low end, like 12,500, high end, nearly 20 grand. Regularly speaking, a guitar like this without any other associations with it, somewhere between 7 and 10,000 in the current market. So this is one of those times where I think the auction house put a very realistic estimate on this. However, I could also see it going crazily high. I want this guitar. I want it so bad. Prehistorics, I'm passionate about them, but I don't think I'm going to be able to afford it, unfortunately. So that's the main star here. I suppose a nice second place might be the other prehistoric in his collection. I didn't know he had two. So this is the one they mentioned in the Burst article about having one with his birth date put on it. That's really cool. It's a custom shop original decal. It might not be as iconic as his 83, but that's got a lot of cool history to it in and of itself. And I suppose it makes more sense now when he was talking about how he didn't realize the original bursts were so different than what Gibson was producing at that time. At least on this one, he got the prehistoric style logoing, but other things that aren't right is you have the more modern style Kluson tuners on it instead of the vintage bushings. This one's got a pretty fantastic top and a distinctively different color to it. It's more tangerine-y. Here's a photo of him playing it in 1996, although he doesn't seem all that enthused. Oh wow, only a 4,000 to 6,000 estimate? I would happily pay 7,500 for that. That's kind of a cool little piece of history. So I guess wish me luck on those if I don't forget about the auction. I'm not even sure these guys ship overseas. So in my opinion, those are the big three, but he's got some other cool guitars. Like, look at this. This is a reissue from 2001. This was a huge step up as compared to his prehistorics. Like if you're trying to get really accurate with the long neck tenon. But I like our faded finish here. That's looking good. Great top. That is a really doofy looking headstock. It appears to actually have been factory aged, because that doesn't look like your typical weather checking. But there's our serial number. Wow, the cherry's really faded off the back. That one's estimated to be between 4,000 and 6,000. I was surprised to see he had one of these, the original Les Paul signature. So if you don't know about these, you can check out this episode, but a quick recap is this was one of the later additions to Les Paul's low impedance series. Things like the Les Paul Recording, Personal, Professional, etc. But I absolutely love these things. They give you fantastic jazzy tones. There's basically a 335, but with a Les Paul's cutaway on one side. This is the best way to put it. Sadly, a lot of these are prone to getting neck twists, and you primarily see them in the early 70s to mid 70s. But what's really cool about this one is it's actually kind of a late 1977. I think they made them until 1980, but production numbers drastically drop off after about 75. But check out the wood grain on the back. That's a cool one. But it looks like he wanted to try some new tones and didn't end up working out. So realistically, probably sat in a case somewhere. Generally speaking, these are like $4,000 to $6,000 guitars, despite what people ask online. The really clean ones can break barriers. And I like the description of this one. It said, circa 2000, probably United States, in the manner of a Gibson Flying V. So I think that tells us it's not a Gibson produced guitar. This is one of those scary ones. There's Chinese knockoffs that almost anybody with a detailed eye can be able to be like, ah, yeah, that's not right. And then there's replica level, where most people, if you put this on Reverb, said it was real, priced it accordingly, even myself would probably be fooled. There are a few things that give it away. Most prominent to me in this photo would be the tuner spacing and the headstock wing style. But the font of the serial actually looks pretty decent. Logo looks fine, but that's easy to fake. You can just buy those. And I would make the argument that the neck joint looks a little bit strange. Like, that is how Gibson does it. The back of the body comes over top of the heel. I'm impressed that they got that far, but something just doesn't quite look right there. So things like this, that's when you call up Eric Ernest, when he has hands-on experience with like the real 50s vintage. But I don't think that's exactly what this one was trying to be. It's just a modern replica. I like our essay here. Bobby, the brother of Mark's ex-wife, sent this singular guitar as a gift in '05, anticipating that Mark would get a, quote, kick out of it. But he also had some other interesting 80s stuff, like this J200 Anniversary Celebrity. I remember the David Gilmour auction that we documented in this episode. He at least had one of these, so J200 in style, although they changed up our pickguard a little bit. I've always been a fan of the banjo-esque style inlays that they had on them, running all up and down the neck. Then the headstock has the fancy vines and flowers going on, and it's got the old world, the Gibson logo. That's pretty fancy for 1985, not as much nowadays, but cool that they left the in front of it, so it's not just like a Les Paul Artisan. And fascinating, looks like a rosewood back, mahogany neck, and badged as a custom shop original. So to put things into perspective here, this was made very late 1985. So Gibson is about to be taken over by new management on the first day of 1986. So it wouldn't surprise me if this one actually started production in old ownership and then was eventually finished under new. But according to this, they made about 90 of those. And both the bassist and Mark got one of them. He also had one of these Chet Atkins electric classicals. He had a few of them, so he must have liked them, but I chose this one because it was kind of an unusual wine red finish. You don't see that too often. But it looks like a classical guitar, except for you have a more traditional style tuning peg system, but then they change everything else that you know about Gibson up here. But it's a solid body, so they even put a little comfort cut in there. Awesome that we have a posi lock strap lock on it. And sweet, nice custom shop edition decal and volute, which is important because we're outside of the voluted era. This is 1988. Volutes get phased out by 82. Then Mark has good taste. There's a 65 Dove. As far as acoustic goes, these are the cream of the crop in my opinion. Whether you like their bridge system or not, this is the quintessential Dove. They've always aged so beautifully. They have the waffle back tuners with low footprint on the headstock. They've got that gorgeous mid-60s Gibson logo with our crown. And then the cherry on top is I love the old style Dove truss rod covers. I don't know why they did this, probably because it's like a dovetail. It's black, but then they have it inlaid white, and then it just says Dove. So cool. And the fact that they're maple bodies and mahogany necks, and you can occasionally get some figuring, is just icing on the cake. But it seems like everything is estimated to be between 4,000 and 6,000 pounds. But next up, I thought this was kind of cool. A natural 330, but the one pickup version in the middle. You don't see those too often, especially not in the natural finish. And then a 2003 Custom Shop Stinger Series Les Paul. You got this one out of Guitar Relics in New York around 2005, and it actually was used on tour. It's a Pelham Blue historic reissue. But what makes it special is the fact that we've got the finish on the back and the neck, and it's got a black stinger. So it looks like it's being based on a 1957 reissue. Custom color 57s are great. They're a lot of fun. You know, before the Custom Color series came out from Gibson USA, that's where you went to find a colored top with a natural back and sides. Now this one's a little bit different. This is a Music Machine exclusive. This is like early days of Stingers actually making a comeback, you know, early 2000s. People start to appreciate them, and Gibson starts to use them more. But Music Machine has this whole custom run. Like here's a Flying V, and here's a Les Paul. Those are collectible guitars yet today, but it's MM for Music Machine, then what version it is, and then the number. What's really cool about that V is it's a cherry color. Then the black pick guard matches the black stinger. So coming back to this one, this is Music Machine, 1957 reissue, the 29th one made. Now they probably made them in a bunch of different colors, but that's cool to know that he's a famous user of one. That's gonna about wrap it up for tonight. You can follow this link to check out everything else. I'm not sure they have everything listed yet, but I really wanted to talk about those Prehistorics because they got me excited. But there's some interesting Schechters and other things, and Gretches and Steinbergers and amps. Okay, some Dan Armstrong. That's actually a pretty cool Sir. He's got some cool Fenders as well. And he had a surprising amount of arch tops and hollow bodies. Look at him there. Staple pickups, triple P90s, humbuckers, all from good eras. And these Pensas are pretty cool. Headstock's a bit pointy, but I feel like this body shape kinda works. Cool wood grain. Oh, don't forget about the Tiscos and other things. Yeah, he's got a whole bunch of stuff in here, but I think we've covered enough for today. Oh, wait, hold on a second. Here's one more we need to talk about. I've never seen that in my life. A travel size acoustic double bass. That's hilarious. So basically they cut off the bottom section and did that. Okay. Aren't you glad you stayed till the end now? That's just hilarious. All right, Troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you tomorrow on the next one. Take care. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, consider subscribing. I post videos like this every day. And you might even enjoy this next one.